Section 5 of the Natural History, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Dodge. The Natural History, Volume 1, by Pliny the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 5. Chapter 6. Of the nature of the stars, of the motion of the planets. Let us return from this digression to the other parts of nature. The stars, which are described as fixed in the heavens, are not, as the vulgar suppose, attached each of them to different individuals, the brighter to the rich, those that are less so to the poor, and the dim to the aged, shining according to the lot of the individual, and separately assigned to mortals, for they have neither come into existence, nor do they perish in connection with particular persons, nor does a falling star indicate that any one is dead. We are not so closely connected with the heavens as that the shining of the stars is affected by our death. When they are supposed to shoot or fall, they throw out, by force of their fire, as if from an excess of nutriment, the superabundance of the humor which they have absorbed, as we observe to take place from the oil in our lamps when they are burning. The nature of the celestial bodies is eternal, being interwoven, as it were, with the world, and by this union rendering it solid. But they exert their most powerful influence on the earth. This, notwithstanding its subtlety, may be known by the clearness and the magnitude of the effect, as we shall point out in the proper place. The account of the circles of the heavens will be better understood when we come to speak of the earth, since they all have a reference to it, except what has been discovered respecting the zodiac, which I shall now detail. Anaximander the Milesian, in the 58th Olympiad, is said to have been the first who understood its obliquity, and thus opened the road to a correct knowledge of the subject. Afterwards, Cleostratus made the signs in it, first marking those of Aries and Sagittarius. Atlas had formed the sphere long before this time. But now, leaving the further consideration of this subject, we must treat of the bodies that are situated between the earth and the heavens. It is certain that the star called Saturn is the highest, and therefore appears the smallest, that he passes through the largest circuit, and that he is at least 30 years in completing it. The course of all the planets, and among others of the sun and the moon, is in the contrary direction to that of the heavens, that is, toward the left, while the heavens are rapidly carried about to the right. And although, by the stars constantly revolving with immense velocity, they are raised up and hurried on to the part where they set, yet they are all forced by a motion of their own in an opposite direction, and this is so ordered lest the air, being always moved in the same direction by the constant whirling of the heavens, should accumulate into one mass, whereas now it is divided and separated and beaten into small pieces by the opposite motion of the different stars. Saturn is a star of a cold and rigid nature, while the orbit of Jupiter is much lower, and is carried round in 12 years. The next star, Mars, which some persons call Hercules, is of a fiery and burning nature, and from its nearness to the sun is carried round in little less than 2 years. In consequence of the excessive heat of this star and the rigidity of Saturn, Jupiter, which is interposed between the two, is tempered by both of them, and is thus rendered salutary. The path of the sun consists of 360 degrees, but in order that the shadow may return to the same point of the dial, we are obliged to add in each year 5 days and the fourth part of a day. On this account, an intercalary day is given to every 5th year, that the period of the seasons may agree with that of the sun. Below the sun revolves the great star called Venus, wandering with an alternate motion, and even in its surnames rivaling the sun and the moon. For when it precedes the day and rises in the morning, it receives the name of Lucifer, as if it were another sun hastening on the day. On the contrary, when it sets in the west, it is named Vesper, as prolonging the light and performing the office of the moon. Pythagoras, the Samian, was the first who discovered its nature, about the 62nd Olympiad, in the 222nd year of the city. It excels all the other stars in size, and its brilliancy is so considerable that it is the only star which produces a shadow by its rays. There has consequently been great interest made for its name. Some have called it the star of Juno, others of Isis, and others of the mother of the gods. By its influence everything in the earth is generated, for as it rises in either direction, it sprinkles everything with its genial dew, and not only matures the productions of the earth, but stimulates all living things. It completes the circuit of the zodiac in 348 days, never receding from the sun more than 46 degrees, according to Timaeus. Similarly circumstanced, but by no means equal in size and in power, next to it is the star Mercury, by some called Apollo. It is carried in a lower orbit, and moves in a course which is quicker by 9 days, shining sometimes before the rising of the sun, and at other times after its setting, but never going farther from it than 23 degrees, as we learn from Timaeus and Sosigenes. The nature of these two stars is peculiar, and is not the same with those mentioned above, for those are seen to recede from the sun through 1/3 or 1/4 part of the heavens, and are often seen opposite to it. They have also larger circuits, in which they make their complete revolutions, as will be described in the account of the great year. But the moon, which is the last of the stars, and the one most connected with the earth, the remedy provided by nature for darkness, excels all the others in its admirable qualities. By the variety of appearances which it assumes, it puzzles the observers, mortified that they should be the most ignorant concerning the star which is nearest to them. She is always either waxing or waning. Sometimes her disk is curved into horns, sometimes it is divided into 2 equal portions, and at other times it is swelled out to a full orb. Sometimes she appears spotted, and suddenly becomes very bright. She appears very large with her full orb, and suddenly becomes invisible, now continuing during all the night, now rising late, and now aiding the light of the sun during a part of the day, becoming eclipsed, and yet being visible while she is eclipsed, concealing herself at the end of the month, and yet not supposed to be eclipsed. Sometimes she is low down, sometimes she is high up, and that not according to one uniform course, being at one time raised up to the heavens, at other times almost contiguous to the mountains, now elevated in the north, now depressed in the south. All which circumstances having been noticed by Endymion, a report was spread out that he was in love with the moon. We are not indeed sufficiently grateful to those who, with so much labor and care, have enlightened us with this light, while so diseased is the human mind that we take pleasure in writing the annals of blood and slaughter, in order that the crimes of men may be made known to those who are ignorant of the constitution of the world itself. Being nearest to the axis, and therefore having the smallest orbit, the moon passes in 27 days and the 1/3 part of a day through the same space for which Saturn, the highest of the planets, as was stated above, requires 30 years. After remaining for 2 days in conjunction with the sun, on the 30th day she again very slowly emerges to pursue her accustomed course. I know not whether she ought not to be considered as our instructress in everything that can be known respecting the heavens, as that the year is divided into the 12 divisions of the months, since she follows the sun for the same number of times, until he returns to the commencement of his course, and that her brightness, as well as that of the other stars, is regulated by that of the sun, if indeed they all of them shine by the light borrowed from him, such as we see floating about when it is reflected from the surface of water. On this account it is that she dissolves so much moisture by a gentle and less perfect force, and adds to the quantity of that which the rays of the sun consume. On this account she appears with an unequal light, because, being full only when she is in opposition, on all the remaining days she shows only so much of herself to the earth as she receives light from the sun. She is not seen in conjunction, because at that time she sends back the whole stream of light to the source whence she has derived it. That the stars generally are nourished by the terrestrial moisture is evident, because when the moon is only half visible she is sometimes seen spotted, her power of absorbing moisture not having been powerful enough, for the spots are nothing else than the dregs of the earth drawn up along with the moisture. But her eclipses and those of the sun, the most wonderful of all the phenomena of nature, and which are like prodigies, serve to indicate the magnitude of these bodies and the shadow which they cast. Chapter 7. Of the eclipses of the moon and the sun. For it is evident that the sun is hid by the intervention of the moon, and the moon by the opposition of the earth, and that these changes are mutual, the moon by her interposition taking the rays of the sun from the earth, and the earth from the moon. As she advances, darkness is suddenly produced, and again the sun is obscured by her shade, for night is nothing more than the shade of the earth. The figure of this shade is like that of a pyramid or an inverted top, and the moon enters it only near its point, and it does not exceed the height of the moon, for there is no other star which is obscured in the same manner, while a figure of this kind always terminates in a point. The flight of birds, when very lofty, shows that shadows do not extend beyond a certain distance. Their limit appears to be the termination of the air and the commencement of the ether. Above the moon everything is pure and full of an eternal light. The stars are visible to us in the night, in the same way that other luminous bodies are seen in the dark. It is from these causes that the moon is eclipsed during the night. The two kinds of eclipses are not, however, at the stated monthly periods, on account of the obliquity of the zodiac, and the irregularly wandering course of the moon, as stated above. Besides that, the motions of these stars do not always occur exactly at the same points. Chapter 8. Of the magnitude of the stars. This kind of reasoning carries the human mind to the heavens, and by contemplating the world, as it were, from thence, it discloses to us the magnitude of the three greatest bodies in nature. For the sun could not be entirely concealed from the earth by the intervention of the moon, if the earth were greater than the moon; and the vast size of the third body, the sun, is manifest from that of the other two, so that it is not necessary to scrutinize its size by arguing from its visible appearance, or from any conjectures of the mind. It must be immense, because the shadows of rows of trees, extending for any number of miles, are disposed in right lines, as if the sun were in the middle of space. Also because at the equinox he is vertical to all the inhabitants of the southern districts at the same time. Also because the shadows of all the people who live on this side of the tropic fall at noon toward the north, and at sunrise point to the west. But this could not be the case unless the sun were much greater than the earth, nor, unless it much exceeded Mount Ida in breadth, could he be seen when he rises, passing considerably beyond it, to the right and to the left, especially considering that it is separated by so great an interval. The eclipse of the moon affords an undoubted argument of the sun's magnitude, as it also does of the small size of the earth. For there are shadows of three figures, and it is evident that if the body which produces the shadow be equal to the light, then it will be thrown off in the form of a pillar, and have no termination. If the body be greater than the light, the shadow will be in the form of an inverted cone, the bottom being the narrowest part, and being at the same time of an infinite length. If the body be less than the light, then we shall have the figure of a pyramid, terminating in a point. Now of this last kind is the shadow which produces the eclipse of the moon, and this is so manifest that there can be no doubt remaining that the earth is exceeded in magnitude by the sun, a circumstance which is indeed indicated by the silent declaration of nature herself. For why does he recede from us at the winter half of the year? That by the darkness of the nights the earth may be refreshed, which otherwise would be burned up, as indeed it is in certain parts, so great is his size. End of Section 5. Section 6 of the Natural History, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Dodge. The Natural History, Volume 1, by Pliny the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 6. Chapter 9. An account of the observations that have been made on the heavens by different individuals. The first among the Romans who explained to the people at large the cause of the two kinds of eclipses was Sulpicius Gallus, who was consul along with Marcellus, and when he was only a military tribune, he relieved the army from great anxiety the day before King Perseus was conquered by Paulus. For he was brought by the general into a public assembly in order to predict the eclipse, of which he afterwards gave an account in a separate treatise. Among the Greeks, Thales the Milesian first investigated the subject in the 4th year of the 48th Olympiad, predicting the eclipse of the sun which took place in the reign of Alyattes, in the 170th year of the city. After them, Hipparchus calculated the course of both these stars for the term of 600 years, including the months, days, and hours, the situation of the different places, and the aspects adapted to each of them. All this has been confirmed by experience, and could only be acquired by partaking, as it were, in the counsels of nature. These were indeed great men, superior to ordinary mortals, who, having discovered the laws of these divine bodies, relieved the miserable mind of man from the fear which he had of eclipses, as foretelling some dreadful events or the destruction of the stars. This alarm is freely acknowledged in the sublime strains of Stesichorus in Pindar as being produced by an eclipse of the sun; and with respect to the eclipse of the moon, mortals impute it to witchcraft, and therefore endeavor to aid her by producing discordant sounds. In consequence of this kind of terror it was that Nicias, the general of the Athenians, being ignorant of the cause, was afraid to lead out the fleet, and brought great distress on his troops. Hail to your genius, ye interpreters of heaven! Ye who comprehend the nature of things, and who have discovered a mode of reasoning by which ye have conquered both gods and men. For who is there, in observing these things and seeing the labors which the stars are compelled to undergo, since we have chosen to apply this term to them, that would not cheerfully submit to his fate as one born to die? I shall now, in a brief and summary manner, touch on those points in which we are agreed, giving the reasons where it is necessary to do so, for this is not a work of profound argument, nor is it less wonderful to be able to suggest a probable cause for everything than to give a complete account of a few of them only. Chapter 10. On the recurrence of the eclipses of the sun and the moon. It is ascertained that the eclipses complete their whole revolution in the space of 223 months, that the eclipse of the sun takes place only at the conclusion or the commencement of a lunation, which is termed conjunction, while an eclipse of the moon takes place only when she is at the full, and is always a little farther advanced than the preceding eclipse. Now there are eclipses of both these stars in every year, which take place below the earth, at stated days and hours, and when they are above it they are not always visible, sometimes on account of the clouds, but more frequently from the globe of the earth being opposed to the vault of the heavens. It was discovered 200 years ago by the sagacity of Hipparchus that the moon is sometimes eclipsed after an interval of 5 months, and the sun after an interval of 7; also that he becomes invisible while above the horizon twice in every 30 days, but that this is seen in different places at different times. But the most wonderful circumstance is, that while it is admitted that the moon is darkened by the shadow of the earth, this occurs at one time on its western and at another time on its eastern side; and farther, that although, after the rising of the sun, that darkening shadow ought to be below the earth, yet it has once happened that the moon has been eclipsed in the west, while both the luminaries have been above the horizon. And as to their both being invisible in the space of 15 days, this very thing happened while the Vespasians were emperors, the father being consul for the 3rd time, and the son for the 2nd. Chapter 11. On the motion of the moon. It is certain that the moon, having her horns always turned from the sun, when she is waxing, looks toward the east; when she is waning, towards the west; also that, from the 2nd day after the change, she adds 47½ minutes each day, until she is full, and again decreases at the same rate, and that she always becomes invisible when she is within 14 degrees of the sun. This is an argument of the greater size of the planets than of the moon, since these emerge when they are at a distance of 7 degrees only. But their altitude causes them to appear much smaller, as we observe that, during the day, the brightness of the sun prevents those bodies from being seen which are fixed in the firmament, although they shine then as well as in the night. That this is the case is proved by eclipses, and by descending into very deep wells. Chapter 12. On the motions of the planets and the general laws of their aspects. The 3 planets which, as we have said, are situated above the sun, are visible when they come into conjunction with him. They rise visibly in the morning, when they are not more than 11 degrees from the sun. They are afterwards directed by the contact of his rays, and when they attain the trine aspect at the distance of 120 degrees, they take their morning stationary positions, which are termed primary. Afterwards, when they are in opposition to the sun, they rise at the distance of 180 degrees from him, and again advancing on the other side to the 120th degree, they attain their evening stations, which are termed secondary, until the sun, having arrived within 12 degrees of them, what is called their evening setting, becomes no longer visible. Mars, as being nearer to the sun, feels the influence of his rays in the quadrature at the distance of 90 degrees, whence that motion receives its name, being termed from the two risings, respectively the first and the second nonagenarian. This planet passes from one station to another in 6 months, or is 2 months in each sign. The two other planets do not spend more than 4 months in passing from station to station. The two inferior planets are, in like manner, concealed in their evening conjunction, and when they have left the sun, they rise in the morning the same number of degrees distant from him, and having arrived at their point of greatest elongation, they then follow the sun, and having overtaken him at their morning setting, they become invisible and pass beyond him. They then rise in the evening at the distances which were mentioned above. After this they return back to the sun and are concealed in their evening setting. The star Venus becomes stationary when at its 2 points of greatest elongation, that at the morning and that of the evening, according to their respective risings. The stationary points of Mercury are so very brief that they cannot be correctly observed. Chapter 13. Why the same stars appear at some times more lofty and at other times more near. The above is an account of the aspects and the occultations of the planets, a subject which is rendered very complicated by their motions, and is involved in much that is wonderful, especially when we observe that they change their size and color, and that the same stars at one time approach the north and then go to the south, and are now seen near the earth, and then suddenly approach the heavens. If on this subject I deliver opinions different from my predecessors, I acknowledge that I am indebted for them to those individuals who first pointed out to us the proper mode of inquiry. Let no one, then, ever despair of benefiting future ages. But these things depend on many different causes. The first cause is the nature of the circles described by the stars, which the Greeks term apsides, for we are obliged to use Greek terms. Now each of the planets has its own circle, and this is a different one from that of the world, because the earth is placed in the center of the heavens with respect to the two extremities which are called the poles, and also in that of the zodiac, which is situated obliquely between them. And all these things are made evident by the infallible results which we obtain by the use of the compasses. Hence the apsides of the planets have each of them different centers, and consequently they have different orbits and motions, since it necessarily follows that the interior apsides are the shortest. The apsides which are the highest from the center of the earth are, for Saturn, when he is in Scorpio; for Jupiter in Virgo; for Mars in Leo; for the Sun in Gemini; for Venus in Sagittarius; and for Mercury in Capricorn, each of them in the middle of these signs, while in the opposite signs they are lowest and nearest to the center of the earth. Hence it is that they appear to move more slowly when they are carried along the highest circuit, not that their actual motions are accelerated or retarded, these being fixed and determinate for each of them, but because it necessarily follows that lines drawn from the highest axis must approach nearer to each other at the center, like the spokes of a wheel, and that the same motion seems to be at one time greater and at another time less, according to the distance from the center. Another cause of the altitudes of the planets is, that their highest apsides, with relation to their own centers, are in different signs from those mentioned above. Saturn is in the 20th degree of Libra, Jupiter in the 15th of Cancer, Mars in the 28th of Capricorn, the Sun in the 19th of Aries, Venus in the 27th of Pisces, Mercury in the 15th of Virgo, and the Moon in the 3rd of Taurus. The third cause of the altitude depends on the form of the heavens, not on that of the orbits. The stars appearing to the eye to mount up and to descend through the depth of the air. With this cause is connected that which depends on the latitude of the planets and the obliquity of the zodiac. It is through this belt that the stars which I have spoken of are carried. Nor is there any part of the world habitable, except what lies under it, the remainder, which is at the poles, being in a wild desert state. The planet Venus alone exceeds it by 2 degrees, which we may suppose to be the cause why some animals are produced even in these desert regions of the earth. The moon also wanders the whole breadth of the zodiac, but never exceeds it. Next to these, the planet Mercury moves through the greatest space, yet out of the 12 degrees, for there are so many degrees of latitude in the zodiac, it does not pass through more than 8, nor does it go equally through these, 2 of them being in the middle of the zodiac, 4 in the upper part, and 2 in the lower part. Next to these, the Sun is carried through the middle of the zodiac, winding unequally through the 2 parts of his tortuous circuit. The star Mars occupies the 4 middle degrees, Jupiter the middle degree and 2 above it. Saturn, like the Sun, occupies 2. The above is an account of the latitudes as they descend to the south or ascend to the north. Hence it is plain that the generality of persons are mistaken in supposing the third cause of the apparent altitude to depend on the stars rising from the earth and climbing up the heavens. But to refute this opinion it is necessary to consider the subject with very great minuteness, and to embrace all the causes. It is generally admitted that the stars at the time of their evening setting are nearest to the earth, both with respect to latitude and altitude, that they are at the commencement of both at their morning risings, and that they become stationary at the middle points of their latitudes, what are called the ecliptics. It is, moreover, acknowledged that their motion is increased when they are in the vicinity of the earth, and diminished when they are removed at a greater altitude, a point which is most clearly proved by the different altitudes of the moon. There is no doubt that it is also increased at the morning risings, and that the 3 superior planets are retarded as they advance from the first station to the second. And since this is the case, it is evident that the latitudes are increased from the time of their morning risings, since the motions afterwards appear to receive less addition, but they gain their altitude in the first station, since the rate of their motion then begins to diminish and the stars to recede. And the reason of this must be particularly set forth. When the planets are struck by the rays of the sun in the situation which I have described, i.e., in their quadrature, they are prevented from holding on their straightforward course, and are raised on high by the force of the fire. This cannot be immediately perceived by the eye, and therefore they seem to be stationary, and hence the term station is derived. Afterwards the violence of the rays increases, and the vapor being beaten back forces them to recede. This exists in a greater degree in their evening risings, the sun being then turned entirely from them, when they are drawn into the highest apsides, and they are then the least visible, since they are at their greatest altitude and are carried along with the least motion, as much less indeed as this takes place in the highest signs of the apsides. At the time of the evening rising, the latitude decreases and becomes less as the motion is diminished, and it does not increase again until they arrive at the second station, when the altitude is also diminished, the sun's rays then coming from the other side. The same force now therefore propels them towards the earth, which before raised them into the heavens, from their former triangular aspect. So different is the effect whether the rays strike the planets from below or come to them from above. And all these circumstances produce much more effect when they occur in the evening setting. This is the doctrine of the superior planets. That of the others is more difficult, and has never been laid down by anyone before me. End of section 6. Section 7 of the Natural History, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Linda Dodge. The Natural History, Volume 1, by Pliny the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 7. Chapter 14. Why the same stars have different motions. I must first state the cause, why the star Venus never recedes from the sun more than 46 degrees, nor Mercury more than 23, while they frequently return to the sun within this distance. As they are situated below the sun, they have both of them their apsides turned in the contrary direction. Their orbits are as much below the earth as those of the stars above mentioned are above it, and therefore they cannot recede any farther, since the curve of their apsides has no greater longitude. The extreme parts of their apsides therefore align the limits to each of them in the same manner, and compensate, as it were, for the small extent of their longitudes, by the great divergence of their latitudes. It may be asked, why do they not always proceed as far as the 46th and 23rd degrees respectively? They in reality do so, but the theory fails us here. For it would appear that the apsides are themselves moved, as they never pass over the sun. When, therefore, they have arrived at the extremities of their orbits on either side, the stars are then supposed to have proceeded to their greatest distance. When they have been a certain number of degrees within their orbits, they are then supposed to return more rapidly, since the extreme point in each is the same. And on this account it is that the direction of their motion appears to be changed. For the superior planets are carried along the most quickly in their evening setting, while these move the most slowly. The former are at their greatest distance from the earth when they move the most slowly, the latter when they move the most quickly. The former are accelerated when nearest to the earth, the latter when at the extremity of the circle. In the former, the rapidity of the motion begins to diminish at their morning risings; in the latter it begins to increase. The former are retrograde from their morning to their evening station, while Venus is retrograde from the evening to the morning station. She begins to increase her latitude from her morning rising. Her altitude follows the sun from her morning station, her motion being the quickest and her altitude the greatest in her morning setting. Her latitude decreases and her altitude diminishes from her evening rising. She becomes retrograde, and at the same time decreases in her altitude from her evening station. Again, the star Mercury, in the same way, mounts up in both directions from his morning rising, and having followed the sun through a space of 15 degrees, he becomes almost stationary for 4 days. Presently he diminishes his altitude, and recedes from his evening setting to his morning rising. Mercury and the moon are the only planets which descend for the same number of days that they ascend. Venus ascends for 15 days and somewhat more. Saturn and Jupiter descend in twice that number of days, and Mars in 4 times. So great is the variety of nature. The reason of it is, however, evident, for those planets which are forced up by the vapor of the sun likewise descend with difficulty. Chapter 15. General Laws of the Planets. There are many other secrets of nature in these points, as well as the laws to which they are subject, which might be mentioned. For example, the planet Mars, whose course is the most difficult to observe, never becomes stationary when Jupiter is in the trine aspect, very rarely when he is 60 degrees from the sun, which number is 1/6 of the circuit of the heavens. Nor does he ever rise in the same sign with Jupiter, except in Cancer and Leo. The star Mercury seldom has his evening risings in Pisces, but very frequently in Virgo, and his morning risings in Libra. He has also his morning rising in Aquarius, very rarely in Leo. He never becomes retrograde in either Taurus or Gemini, nor until the 25th degree of Cancer. The moon makes her double conjunction with the sun in no other sign except Gemini, while Sagittarius is the only sign in which she has sometimes no conjunction at all. The old and the new moon are visible on the same day or night in no other sign except Aries, and indeed it has happened very seldom to any one to have witnessed it. From this circumstance it was that the tale of Lynceus's quick-sightedness originated. Saturn and Mars are invisible at most for 170 days, Jupiter for 36, or at the least for 10 days less than this, Venus for 69, or at the least for 52, Mercury for 13, or at the most for 18. Chapter 16. The reason why the stars are of different colors. The difference of their color depends on the difference in their altitudes, for they acquire a resemblance to those planets into the vapor of which they are carried, the orbit of each tinging those that approach it in each direction. A colder planet renders one that approaches it paler, one more hot renders it redder. A windy planet gives it a lowering aspect, while the sun, at the union of their apsides, or the extremity of their orbits, completely obscures them. Each of the planets has its peculiar color. Saturn is white, Jupiter brilliant, Mars fiery, Lucifer is glowing, Vesper refulgent, Mercury sparkling, the moon mild. The sun, when he rises, is blazing. Afterwards he becomes radiating. The appearance of the stars, which are fixed in the firmament, is also affected by these causes. At one time we see a dense cluster of stars around the moon, when she is only half enlightened, and when they are viewed in a serene evening, while at another time, when the moon is full, there are so few to be seen that we wonder whither they are fled. And this is also the case when the rays of the sun or of any of the above mentioned bodies have dazzled our sight. And indeed the moon herself is, without doubt, differently affected at different times by the rays of the sun when she is entering them, the convexity of the heavens rendering them more feeble than when they fall upon her more directly. Hence, when she is at a right angle to the sun, she is half enlightened; when in the trine aspect, she presents an imperfect orb, while in opposition she is full. Again, when she is waning, she goes through the same gradations, and in the same order, as the three stars that are superior to the sun. Chapter 17. Of the motion of the sun, and the cause of the irregularity of the days. The sun himself is in four different states. Twice the night is equal to the day, in the spring and in the autumn, when he is opposed to the center of the earth, in the 8th degree of Aries and Libra. The length of the day and the night is then twice changed, when the day increases in length, from the winter solstice in the 8th degree of Capricorn, and afterwards when the night increases in length from the summer solstice in the 8th degree of Cancer. The cause of this inequality is the obliquity of the zodiac, since there is at every moment of time an equal portion of the firmament above and below the horizon. But the signs which mount directly upwards, when they rise, retain the light for a longer space, while those that are more oblique pass along more quickly. Chapter 18. Why thunder is ascribed to Jupiter. It is not generally known what has been discovered by men who are the most eminent for their learning, in consequence of their assiduous observations of the heavens, that the fires which fall upon the earth and receive the name of thunderbolts proceed from the three superior stars, but principally from the one which is situated in the middle. It may perhaps depend upon the superabundance of moisture from the superior orbit communicating with the heat from the inferior, which are expelled in this manner, and hence it is commonly said the thunderbolts are darted by Jupiter. And as in burning wood the burnt part is cast off with a crackling noise, so does the star throw off this celestial fire, bearing the omens of future events, even the part which is thrown off not losing its divine operation. And this takes place more particularly when the air is in an unsettled state, either because the moisture which is then collected excites the greatest quantity of fire, or because the air is disturbed, as if by the parturition of the pregnant star. Chapter 19. Of the distances of the stars. Many persons have attempted to discover the distance of the stars from the earth, and they have published as the result that the sun is 19 times as far from the moon as the moon herself is from the earth. Pythagoras, who was a man of a very sagacious mind, computed the distance from the earth to the moon to be 126,000 furlongs, that from her to the sun is double this distance, and that it is 3 times this distance to the 12 signs. And this was also the opinion of our countryman, Gallus Sulpicius. Chapter 20. Of the harmony of the stars. Pythagoras, employing the terms that are used in music, sometimes names the distance between the earth and the moon a tone. From her to Mercury he supposes to be half this space, and about the same from him to Venus. From her to the sun is a tone and a half. From the sun to Mars is a tone, the same as from the earth to the moon. From him there is half a tone to Jupiter. From Jupiter to Saturn also half a tone, and thence a tone and a half to the zodiac. Hence there are 7 tones, which he terms the diapason harmony, meaning the whole compass of the notes. In this, Saturn is said to move in the Doric time, Jupiter in the Phrygian, and so forth of the rest. But this is a refinement rather amusing than useful. Chapter 21. Of the dimensions of the world. The stadium is equal to 125 of our Roman paces, or 625 feet. Poseidonus supposes that there is a space of not less than 40 stadia round the earth, whence the mist, winds, and clouds proceed. Beyond this, he supposes that the air is pure and liquid, consisting of uninterrupted light. From the clouded region to the moon there is a space of 2,000,000 of stadia, and thence to the sun of 500,000,000. It is in consequence of this space that the sun, notwithstanding his immense magnitude, does not burn the earth. Many persons have imagined that the clouds rise to the height of 900 stadia. These points are not completely made out, and are difficult to explain, but we have given the best account of them that has been published; and if we may be allowed in any degree to pursue these investigations, there is one infallible geometrical principle which we cannot reject. Not that we can ascertain the exact dimensions, for to profess to do this would be almost the act of a madman, but that the mind may have some estimate to direct its conjectures. Now it is evident that the orbit through which the sun passes consists of nearly 366 degrees, and that the diameter is always the third part and a little less than the seventh of the circumference. Then, taking the half of this, for the earth is placed in the center, it will follow that nearly 1/6 part of the immense space which the mind conceives as constituting the orbit of the sun round the earth will compose his altitude. That of the moon will be 1/12 part, since her course is so much shorter than that of the sun. She is therefore carried along midway between the sun and the earth. It is astonishing to what an extent the weakness of the mind will proceed, urged on by a little success, as in the above mentioned instance, to give full scope to its impudence. Thus, having ventured to guess at the space between the sun and the earth, we do the same with respect to the heavens, because he is situated midway between them, so that we may come to know the measure of the whole world in inches. For if the diameter consists of 7 parts, there will be 22 of the same parts in the circumference, as if we could measure the heavens by a plumb line. The Egyptian calculation, which was made out by Petesiris and the Kepsos, supposes that each degree of the lunar orbit, which, as I have said, is the least, consists of little more than 33 stadia. In the very large orbit of Saturn the number is double. In that of the sun, which, as we have said, is in the middle, we have half the sum of these numbers. And this is indeed a very modest calculation, since if we add to the orbit of Saturn the distance from him to the zodiac, we shall have an infinite number of degrees. Chapter 22. Of the stars which appear suddenly, or of comets. A few things still remain to be said concerning the world, for stars are suddenly formed in the heavens themselves. Of these there are various kinds. The Greeks name these stars comets. We name them Critini, as if shaggy with bloody locks, and surrounded with bristles like hair. Those stars which have a mane hanging down from their lower part like a long beard are named Pogonii. Those that are named Acantii vibrate like a dart with a very quick motion. It was one of this kind which the Emperor Titus described in his very excellent poem, as having been seen in his 5th consulship, and this was the last of these bodies which has been observed. When they are short and pointed, they are named Ziphiae. These are the pale kind. They shine like a sword, and are without any rays, while we name those Discae, which, being of an amber color, and in conformity with their name, emit a few rays from their margin only. A kind named Pythias exhibits the figure of a cask, appearing convex and emitting a smoky light. The kind named Cerastius has the appearance of a horn. It is like the one which was visible when the Greeks fought at Salamis. Lampadius is like a burning torch. Hippias is like a horse's mane. It has a very rapid motion, like the circle revolving on itself. There is also a white comet with silver hair, so brilliant that it can scarcely be looked at, exhibiting, as it were, the aspect of the deity in a human form. There are some also that are shaggy, having the appearance of a fleece, surrounded by a kind of crown. There was one where the appearance of a mane was changed into that of a spear. It happened in the 109th Olympiad, in the 398th year of the city. The shortest time during which any one of them has been observed to be visible is 7 days, the longest 180 days. Chapter 23. Their nature, situation, and species. Some of them move about in the manner of planets, others remain stationary. They are almost all of them seen towards the north, not indeed in any particular portion of it, but generally in that white part of it which has obtained the name of the Milky Way. Aristotle informs us that several of them are to be seen at the same time, but this, as far as I know, has not been observed by any one else. Also that they prognosticate high winds and great heat. They are also visible in the winter months, and about the South Pole, but they have no rays proceeding from them. There was a dreadful one observed by the Ethiopians and the Egyptians, to which Typhon, the king of that period, gave his own name. It had a fiery appearance, and was twisted like a spiral. Its aspect was hideous, nor was it like a star, but rather like a knot of fire. Sometimes there were hairs attached to the planets and the other stars. Comets are never seen in the western part of the heavens. It is generally regarded as a terrific star, and one not easily expiated, as was the case with the civil commotions in the consulship of Octavius, and also in the war of Pompey and Caesar, and in our own age about the time when Claudius Caesar was poisoned and left the empire to Domitius Nero, and afterwards, while the latter was emperor, there was one which was almost constantly seen and was very frightful. It is thought important to notice towards what part it darts its beams, or from what star it receives its influence, what it resembles, and in what places it shines. If it resembles a flute, it portends something unfavorable respecting music. If it appears in the parts of the signs referred to the secret members, something respecting lewdness of manners, something respecting wit and learning if they form a triangular or quadrilangular figure with the position of some of the fixed stars, and that someone will be poisoned if they appear in the head of either the northern or the southern serpent. Rome is the only place in the whole world where there is a temple dedicated to a comet. It was thought by the late Emperor Augustus to be auspicious to him, from its appearance during the games which he was celebrating in honor of Venus Genetrix, not long after the death of his father Caesar, in the college which was founded by him. He expressed his joy in these terms: "During the very time of these games of mine, a hairy star was seen during 7 days, in the part of the heavens which is under the Great Bear. It rose about the 11th hour of the day, was very bright, and was conspicuous in all parts of the earth. The common people supposed the star to indicate that the soul of Caesar was admitted among the immortal gods, under which designation it was that the star was placed on the bust which was lately consecrated in the Forum. This is what he proclaimed in public, but in secret he rejoiced at this auspicious omen, interpreting it as produced for himself, and to confess the truth, it really proved a salutary omen for the world at large. Some persons suppose that those stars are permanent, and that they move through their proper orbits, but that they are only visible when they recede from the sun. Others suppose that they are produced by an accidental vapor, together with the force of fire, and that from this circumstance they are likely to be dissipated." End of section 7.
Section 8 of the Natural History Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Natural History Volume 1 by Pliny the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 8. Chapter 24. The Doctrine of Hipparchus about the Stars. This same Hipparchus, who can never be sufficiently commended, as one who more especially proved the relation of the stars to man, and that our souls are a portion of heaven, discovered a new star that was produced in his own age. And, by observing its motions on the day in which it shone, he was led to doubt whether it does not often happen that those stars have motion which we suppose to be fixed. And the same individual attempted, what might seem presumptuous even in a deity, viz., to number the stars for posterity and to express their relations by appropriate names, having previously devised instruments by which he might mark the places and the magnitudes of each individual star. In this way it might be easily discovered, not only whether they were destroyed or produced, but whether they changed their relative positions, and likewise whether they were increased or diminished, the heavens being thus left as an inheritance to any one who might be found competent to complete his plan. Chapter 25. Examples from history of celestial prodigies, Phases, Lampedes, and Bolides. The phases shine brilliantly, but they are never seen excepting when they are falling. One of these darted across the heavens in the sight of all the people at noonday when Germanicus Caesar was exhibiting a show of gladiators. There are two kinds of them, those which are called Lampedes and those which are called Bolides, one of which latter was seen during the troubles at Mutina. They differ from each other in this respect, that the phases produce a long train of light, the forepart only being on fire, while the Bolides, being entirely in a state of combustion, leave a still longer track behind them. Chapter 26. Trapes Celestis, Chasma Coeli. The trapes also, which are named Dokoi, shine in the same manner. One of these was seen at the time when the Lacedaemonians, by being conquered at sea, lost their influence in Greece. An opening sometimes takes place in the firmament, which is named Chasma. Chapter 27. Of the colors of the sky and of celestial flame. There is a flame of a bloody appearance, and nothing is more dreaded by mortals, which falls down upon the earth, such as was seen in the 3rd year of the 103rd Olympiad, when King Philip was disturbing Greece. But my opinion is that these, like everything else, occur at stated, natural periods, and are not produced, as some persons imagine, from a variety of causes, such as their fine genius may suggest. They have indeed been the precursors of great evils, but I conceive that the evils occurred not because the prodigies took place, but that these took place because the evils were appointed to occur at that period. Their cause is obscure in consequence of their rarity, and therefore we are not as well acquainted with them as we are with the rising of the stars, which I have mentioned, and with eclipses and many other things. Chapter 28. Of celestial coronae. Stars are occasionally seen along with the sun, for whole days together, and generally round its orb, like wreaths made of the ears of corn, or circles of various colors, such as occurred when Augustus, while a very young man, was entering the city after the death of his father, in order to take upon himself the great name which he assumed. The same coronae occur about the moon and also about the principal stars, which are stationary in the heavens. Chapter 29. Of sudden circles. A bow appeared round the sun in the consulship of L. Opimius and L. Fabius, and a circle in that of C. Porcius and M. Acilius. There was a little circle of a red color in the consulship of L. Julius and P. Rutilius. Chapter 30. Of unusually long eclipses of the sun. Eclipses of the sun also take place which are portentous and unusually long, such as occurred when Caesar the dictator was slain, and in the war against Antony the sun remained dim for almost a whole year. Chapter 31. Many suns. And again, many suns have been seen at the same time, not above or below the real sun, but in an oblique direction, never near nor opposite to the earth, nor in the night, but either in the east or in the west. They are said to have been seen once at noon in the Bosphorus, and to have continued from morning until sunset. Our ancestors have frequently seen 3 suns at the same time, as was the case in the consulship of S. P. Postimius and L. Mucius, of L. Marcius and M. Porcius, and that of M. Antony and Dolabella, and that of M. Lepidus and L. Plancus. And we have ourselves seen one during the reign of the late Emperor Claudius, when he was consul along with Cornelius Orvitus. We have no account transmitted to us of more than 3 having been seen at the same time. Chapter 32. Many moons. 3 moons have also been seen, as was the case in the consulship of C. Domitius and C. Fannius. They have generally been named nocturnal suns. Chapter 33. Daylight in the night. A bright light has been seen proceeding from the heavens in the night time, as was the case in the consulship of C. Caecilius and C. N. Papirius, and at many other times, so that there has been a kind of daylight in the night. Chapter 34. Burning shields. A burning shield darted across at sunset from west to east, throwing out sparks, in the consulship of L. Valerius and C. Marius. Chapter 35. An ominous appearance in the heavens, that was seen once only. We have an account of a spark falling from a star, and increasing as it approached the earth, until it became of the size of the moon, shining as through a cloud. It afterwards returned into the heavens, and was converted into a lampus. This occurred in the consulship of C. N. Octavius and C. Scribonius. It was seen by Solanus, the proconsul, and his attendants. Chapter 36. Of stars which move about in various directions. Stars are seen to move about in various directions, but never without some cause, nor without violent winds proceeding from the same quarter. Chapter 37. Of the stars which are named Castor and Pollux. These stars occur both at sea and at land. I have seen, during the night watches of the soldiers, a luminous appearance, like a star, attached to the javelins on the ramparts. They also settle on the yard arms and other parts of ships while sailing, producing a kind of vocal sound, like that of birds flitting about. When they occur singly, they are mischievous, so as even to sink the vessels, and if they strike on the lower part of the keel, setting them on fire. When there are 2 of them, they are considered auspicious, and are thought to predict a prosperous voyage, as it is said that they drive away that dreadful and terrific meteor named Helena. On this account, their efficacy is ascribed to Castor and Pollux, and they are invoked as gods. They also occasionally shine round the heads of men in the evening, which is considered as predicting something very important. But there is great uncertainty respecting the cause of all these things, and they are concealed in the majesty of nature. Chapter 38. Of the air, and of the cause of the showers of stones. So far I have spoken of the world itself and of the stars. I must now give an account of the other remarkable phenomena of the heavens. for our ancestors have given the name of heavens, or sometimes another name, air, to all the seemingly void space, which diffuses around us this vital spirit. It is situated beneath the moon, indeed much lower, as is admitted by everyone who has made observations on it, and is composed of a great quantity of air from the upper regions, mixed with a great quantity of terrestrial vapor, the two forming a compound. Hence proceed clouds, thunder and lightning of all kinds, hence also hail, frost, showers, storms, and whirlwinds. Hence proceed many of the evils incident to mortals, and the mutual contests of the various parts of nature. The force of the stars keeps down all terrestrial things which tend towards the heavens, and the same force attracts to itself those things which do not go there spontaneously. The showers fall, mists rise up, rivers are dried up, hailstorms rush down, the rays of the sun parch the earth and impel it from all quarters towards the center. The same rays, still unbroken, dart back again, and carry with them whatever they can take up. Vapor falls from on high and returns again to the same place. Winds arise which contain nothing, but which return loaded with spoils. The breathing of so many animals draws down the spirit from the higher regions, but this tends to go in a contrary direction, and the earth pours out its spirit into the void space of the heavens. Thus, nature moving to and fro, as if impelled by some machine, discord is kindled by the rapid motion of the world. Nor is the contest allowed to cease, for she is continually whirled round, and lays open the causes of all things, forming an immense globe about the earth, while she again, from time to time, covers this other firmament with clouds. This is the region of the winds. Here their nature principally originates, as well as the causes of almost all other things, since most persons ascribe the darting of thunder and lightning to their violence. And to the same cause are assigned the showers of stones, these having been previously taken up by the wind, as well as many other bodies in the same way. On this account we must enter more at large on this subject. Chapter 39. Of the stated seasons. It is obvious that there are causes of the seasons and of other things which have been stated, while there are some things which are casual, or of which the reason has not yet been discovered. For who can doubt that summer and winter, and the annual revolution of the seasons, are caused by the motion of the stars? As therefore the nature of the sun is understood to influence the temperature of the year, so each of the other stars has its specific power, which produces its appropriate effects. Some abound in a fluid retaining its liquid state, others in the same fluid concreted into hoar frost, compressed into snow, or frozen into hail. Some are prolific in winds, some in heat, some in vapors, some in dew, some in cold. But these bodies must not be supposed to be actually of the size which they appear, since the consideration of their immense height clearly proves that none of them are less than the moon. Each of them exercises its influence over us by its own motions. This is particularly observable with respect to Saturn, which produces a great quantity of rain in its transits. Nor is this power confined to the stars which change their situations, but is found to exist in many of the fixed stars, whenever they are impelled by the force of any of the planets, or excited by the impulse of their rays, as we find to be the case with respect to the Succulae, which the Greeks, in reference to their rainy nature, have termed the Hyades. There are also certain events which occur spontaneously, and at stated periods, as the rising of the Kids. The star Arcturus scarcely ever rises without storms or hail occurring. Chapter 40. Of the rising of the Dog Star. Who is there that does not know that the vapor of the sun is kindled by the rising of the Dog Star? The most powerful effects are felt on the earth from this star. When it rises, the seas are troubled, the wines in our cellars ferment, and stagnant waters are set in motion. There is a wild beast named by the Egyptians oryx, which, when the star rises, is said to stand opposite to it, to look steadfastly at it, and then to sneeze, as if it were worshipping it. There is no doubt that dogs, during the whole of this period, are peculiarly disposed to become rabid. Chapter 41. Of the regular influence of the different seasons. There is, moreover, a peculiar influence in the different degrees of certain signs, as in the autumnal equinox and also in the winter solstice, when we find that a particular star is connected with the state of the weather. It is not so much the recurrence of showers and storms, as of various circumstances which act both upon animals and vegetables. Some are planet-struck, and others, at stated times, are affected in the bowels, the sinews, the head, or the intellect. The olive, the white poplar, and the willow turn their leaves round at the summer solstice. The herb pulegium, when dried and hanging up in a house, blossoms on the very day of the winter solstice, and bladders burst in consequence of their being distended with air. One might wonder at this. Did we not observe every day that the plant named heliotrope always looks towards the setting sun, and is, at all hours, turned towards him, even when he is obscured by clouds? It is certain that the bodies of oysters and of whelks, and of shellfish generally, are increasing in size and again diminished by the influence of the moon. Certain accurate observers have found out that the entrails of the field mouse correspond in number to the moon's age, and that a very small animal, the ant, feels the power of this luminary, always resting from their labors at the change of the moon. And so much more disgraceful is our ignorance, as every one acknowledges that the diseases in the eyes of the certain beasts of burden increase and diminish according to the age of the moon. But the immensity of the heavens, divided as they are into 72 constellations, may serve as an excuse. These are the resemblances of certain things, animate and inanimate, into which the learned have divided the heavens. In these they have announced 1600 stars, as being remarkable either for their effects or their appearance. For example, in the tail of the bull there are 7 stars, which are named Virgiliae. In his forehead are the Succulae. There is also Bootes, which follows the 7 northern stars. Chapter 42. Of uncertain states of the weather. But I would not deny that there may exist showers and winds independent of these causes, since it is certain that an exhalation proceeds from the earth, which is sometimes moist, and at other times, in consequence of the vapors, like dense smoke, and also that clouds are formed, either from the fluid rising up on high, or from the air being compressed into a fluid. Their density and their substance is very clearly proved from their intercepting the sun's rays, which are visible by divers, even in the deepest waters. Chapter 43. Of thunder and lightning. It cannot therefore be denied that fire proceeding from the stars which are above the clouds may fall on them, as we frequently observe on serene evenings, and that the air is agitated by the impulse, as darts when they are hurled whiz through the air. And when it arrives at the cloud, a discordant kind of vapor is produced, as when hot iron is plunged into water, and a wreath of smoke is evolved. Hence arise squalls. And if wind or vapor be struggling in the cloud, thunder is discharged. If it bursts out with a flame, there is a thunderbolt. If it be long in forcing out its way, it is simply a flash of lightning. By the latter, the cloud is simply rent. By the former, it is shattered. Thunder is produced by the stroke given to the condensed air, and hence it is that the fire darts from the chinks of the clouds. It is possible also that the vapor, which has risen from the earth, being repelled by the stars, may produce thunder, when it is pent up in a cloud. Nature restraining the sound whilst the vapor is struggling to escape, but when it does escape, the sound bursting forth, as is the case with bladders that are distended with air. It is possible also that the spirit, whatever it be, may be kindled by friction, when it is so violently projected. It is possible that, by the dashing of the two clouds, the lightning may flash out, as is the case when two stones are struck against each other. But all these things appear to be casual. Hence there are thunderbolts which produce no effect, and proceed from no immediate actual cause. By these mountains and seas are struck, and no injury is done. Those which prognosticate future events proceed from on high and from stated causes, and they come from their peculiar stars. Chapter 44. The Origin of Winds. In like manner, I would not deny that winds, or rather sudden gusts, are produced by the arid and dry vapors of the earth. That air may also be exhaled from water, which can neither be condensed into a mist, nor compressed into a cloud. That it may be also driven forward by the impulse of the sun, since by the term wind we mean nothing more than a current of air, by whatever means it may be produced. For we observe winds to proceed from rivers and bays, and from the sea, even when it is tranquil, while others, which are named altani, rise up from the earth. When they come back from the sea, they are named tropoi, but if they go straight on, apogoi. The windings and the numerous peaks of mountains, their ridges, bent into angles or broken into defiles, with the hollow valleys, by their irregular forms, cleaving the air which rebounds from them, which is also the cause why voices are, in many cases, repeated several times in succession, give rise to winds. There are certain caves, such as that on the coast of Dalmatia, with a vast perpendicular chasm, into which, if a light weight only be let down, and although the day be calm, a squall issues from it like a whirlwind. The name of the place is Senta. And also, in the province of Cyrenaica, there is a certain rock, said to be sacred to the south wind, which it is profane for a human hand to touch, as the south wind immediately rolls forward clouds of sand. There are also, in many houses, artificial cavities, formed in the walls, which produce currents of air. None of these are without their appropriate cause. Chapter 45. Various observations respecting winds. But there is a great difference between a gale and a wind. The former are uniform and appear to rush forth. They are felt not in certain spots only, but over whole countries, not forming breezes or squalls, but violent storms. Whether they be produced by the constant revolution of the world and the opposite motion of the stars, or whether they both of them depend on the generative spirit of the nature of things, wandering, as it were, up and down in her womb, or whether the air be scorched by the irregular strokes of the wandering stars, or the various projections of their rays, or whether they, each of them, proceed from their own stars, among which are those that are nearest to us, or whether they descend from those that are fixed in the heavens, it is manifest that they are all governed by a law of nature, which is not altogether unknown, although it be not completely ascertained. More than 20 old Greek writers have published their observations upon this subject. And this is the more remarkable, seeing that there is so much discord in the world, and that it is divided into different kingdoms, that is, into separate members, that there should have been so many who have paid attention to these subjects, which are so difficult to investigate. Especially when we consider the wars and the treachery which everywhere prevail, while pirates, the enemies of the human race, have possession of all the modes of communication, so that, at this time, a person may acquire more correct information about a country from the writings of those who have never been there, than from the inhabitants themselves. Whereas, at this day, in the blessed peace which we enjoy, under a prince who so greatly encourages the advancement of the arts, no new inquiries are set on foot, nor do we even make ourselves thoroughly masters of the discoveries of the ancients. Not that there were greater rewards held out, from the advantages being distributed to a greater number of persons, but that there were more individuals who diligently scrutinized these matters, with no other prospect but that of benefiting posterity. It is that the manners of man are degenerated, not that the advantages are diminished. All the seas, as many as there are, being laid open, and a hospitable reception being given us at every shore, an immense number of people undertake voyages, but it is for the sake of gain, not of science. Nor does their understanding, which is blinded and bent only on avarice, perceive that this very thing might be more safely done by means of science. Seeing, therefore, that there are so many thousands of persons on the seas, I will treat of the winds with more minuteness than perhaps might otherwise appear suitable to my undertaking. End of section 8. Recording by Peter Zinn.